Hi everyone, and welcome to ODTUG's online education series. Today's presentation is Saying Goodbye to EPMA, presented by Avi Nurikar of EPMware. Today's presentation will be recorded and available for viewing on the ODTUG website. And please put your questions into the questions box at any time during the presentation. We will address them during the Q&A period at the end of the webinar. So welcome, Avi, and thank you for being here today.
Great, thanks, Karen. It's always a pleasure to be here and presenting with ODTUG family. Today's presentation is saying goodbye to our good friend EPMA. And I know that through our recent Kscope presentations and Kscope events, I'm sure we've heard a lot about what's happening with our latest upgrade to 11.2. And our presentation is kind of twofold here. We want to talk a little bit about EPMA and the features and functions that we're using. And we also want to show people the different options that you have upon performing the upgrade. So there's a few things to think about. Of course, things are still changing as 11.2 isn't quite released yet, and there haven't been chances to thoroughly explore how the upgrade is going to work. So what we're going to do is talk about what we do know, and we'll continue to just update our presentation in the form of an article as we get more information, either through Open World, which is going on right now, and the other various set of localized events that are occurring. So before we run into the presentation, or before we jump in, we do want to just point out that Kscope 20 is going to be in Boston in 2020. From June 28th to July 2nd. To register, go over to kscope20.odtug.com. We were a sponsor last year and the last few years, I think, and we're definitely sponsoring next year. It was a blast last year, and can't wait to be in Boston next year. It should be a great time as usual. So for those of you that don't know about us and EPMware, just wanted to do a short introduction on exactly who we are and what we do. My name is Avi Nurikar, one of the co-founders here at EPMware, and EPMware is a software company. Started by a group of Oracle Hyperion consultants and EBS consultants. It is a cloud and on-premise software that's designed for the business user to really control your metadata from a metadata management perspective and a data governance perspective. We allow Oracle and non-Oracle hierarchies to live within the solution, and we allow customers to interact with that metadata either as an end user and an administrator to be able to request metadata, put it through a proper governance process, and then automatically deploy that out to the target application. So a source of truth for all enterprise master data, not just Oracle. A little bit about our company. We are headquartered in Silicon Valley in San Jose. We do have offices on the East Coast and also in India. And of course, our offerings are on-premise and our AWS SaaS cloud offering. It is available as the same exact code base, so the functionality is exactly the same. As far as consulting goes, we do work with a number of different partners in the industry, and we do consulting on EPMware at EPMware itself. As far as support goes, we do offer 24/7 support. End user admin training is available through EPMware or through a number of global partners that we work with. Just a few of our marquee customers that we've worked with, either either replacing EPMA or adding data governance, master data management solutions across the board, interacting with Oracle and non-Oracle metadata. Every customer is a referenceable customer, and we're more than happy to talk to you about some of these use cases and how complex some of these implementations could be or were. So on with the presentation. Main topic of the day here, EPMA is gone from 11.2 and so this was the big news that we did hear about at Kscope. After about 10 years, EPMA finally wrapped up, as most of you know from either potentially consulting on it or using on it. It was a tough product to use back in the day when it was first released. It was a little buggy, and it did actually get stable and was a decent option for customers who wanted to simply share metadata, either between applications, local applications or shared applications, and we'll get into a little bit of that later on what that really means. But Oracle has decided to, with the version 11.2, is to now deprecate this functionality. And now we want to think about if we're using EPMA, what do we do? Right? What are the options for metadata management after the upgrade? What happens when we press the upgrade button? Right now we also want to think about some of the more important features of EPMA, some of the more detailed integrations that folks may be using, like interface tables to EPMA. And you may think that, okay, this is just a simple feature, but it really does have an impact on your overall automation strategy. Also, what are we going to have to rebuild to get EPMA-like features back? So most of you know EPMA was able to validate applications. It included built-in validations, had deployment capabilities. Now all of that stuff is gone. What do we do? Also, is Oracle Cloud on our future roadmap? Ideally, with a metadata management strategy, what we want to do is make sure that we are able to centrally provide metadata management between all of our Oracle Cloud and on-prem applications. All right. Also, are there any data governance requirements? So lately, what we're seeing now is we're moving away from our archaic data governance platform of email and SharePoint or Excel, and trying to get into a more systematic and centralized method of capturing request-based approvals and reviews or enrichment of metadata as it goes through a formal process. So a few of these things we want to do a deep dive into, and here we go. So major features used in EPMA. Now, these were probably the most popular features and functions of EPMA. It was great to actually use these, and again, I have to preface it with when it did work, and of course it did get stable as the years went on. But one of the biggest ones was the shared library. So what EPMA allowed us to do was share metadata and dimensions between multiple applications in one hierarchy. Now, again, this was probably difficult to do if you had metadata that was different between applications, but this was something that did make it easy for administrators to centralize metadata management. Now, local applications was the route that most folks took if there were significant metadata differences, but at least you had this centralized visualization of what your metadata was between applications, and you did have the opportunity to move metadata around between or add metadata from one local application and then call it something else in another local application. But it was good to see your hierarchies kind of together in one screen. Validations and default property settings. Now, this was probably, one of the greatest things that Oracle did with EPMA was to build in these validations to make sure that when these went to the target applications, the deployments didn't fail. So we got a check of all of the metadata that was in our application, and we were able to run a validation to say, did I have a member name alias, duplicate value, or did I have a property set incorrectly? Those validation checks were pretty big. Also, comparing of applications. If you ever wanted to know, was my metadata out of sync with my production application, you were able to run a quick sync, or you were able to even say, what was the metadata that was deployed to production, and what are the changes that I have in my undeployed version? Now, give me a specific list of all of those changes to understand what was pushed out to those target apps. Right, and of course, the last one was direct deployment. So when we clicked deploy, EPMA was able to push that metadata directly to the target application and refresh it in our dimension library, as well as give us a pretty great audit trail in the application library of what was pushed, when did it get pushed, and was it successful or not. Now, when we upgrade to 11.2, we know that the functionality of EPMA is gone, and so is the entire product. What we do know from Kscope announcements are that Oracle is including a limited use DRM with 11.2. Now, what's included over here? We do have the capability of managing Oracle Hyperion on-prem applications with this DRM Lite. The data relationship steward roles are limited to max 5 users. And of course, we are going to get some type of migration utility. Now, what exactly that migration utility is going to do, it's still unknown, but I think a lot more details will come out of that in the next few months as 11.2 is released, or as folks actually get into 11.2 and understand how it works. What is not included? The capability of reading or feeding from any other application or data warehouse. So that means that interface tables or automation that we may be using is likely not going to be allowed with DRM Lite. DRG, data relationship governance, which was review or approval capabilities. This will also not be available as part as any functionality. Now, again, this was not in EPMA before, but a lot of folks may think that, if I go to DRM or I go with DRM Lite, I may have some, governance capabilities. That is absolutely not the case. DRM analytics is also not available. And of course, unlimited use of all features and functionality. So it is a limited set of features that we have to use. Now, again, if this is you're an EPMA customer right now, EPMA was free. You can definitely use this DRM Lite version to keep things active. It is highly likely that you'll have to bring in a consulting organization to get this up and running, but there are things to think about, like what are we going to do to get some of this basic functionality that we had in EPMA in this new DRM Lite. Now, the unknown that we know is classic application migration. What we're thinking is that when we hit the button for 11.2, all of our applications are going to be converted into classic, but this is not something that we know yet or has been announced. But in speaking with a few different customers, I think what people are leaning towards is converting from EPMA to Classic prior to doing the upgrade to 11.2. It's reducing risk and some of the unknowns. Along with that, they're actually, for us, they're working with some rationalization and metadata updates in an EPMware implementation, but we can get into that a little bit later. So down the road, of course, we're going to continue to update this presentation as we get more information with what exactly happens when we press the button, and is using DRM Lite actually an option for you? And it may be. We don't want to particularly tell you that EPMware is the only answer and that's what you should do. But what we do want to do is absolutely give you as much information as we can so you can make the right decision. And that leads us to our second option that other customers are also using, is to use EPMware to replace that EPMA functionality. Now, as we said before, what do we get with this? With EPMware, one of the biggest things that we're going to get is the ability to manage metadata and also have a centralized governance application in one platform. We also do allow plug and play connectivity to all of the Oracle Hyperion Cloud and on-prem applications. And this is out of the box, so we're not paying extra for connecting to or buying connections to target applications. Everything that we build, everything that we support is available right away. It is a technology agnostic application, so that means that you are able to manage Oracle, Hyperion, NetSuite, Workday, OneStream, whatever metadata you want to manage. You can manage it all in EPMware. You can create custom applications, custom properties, and manage metadata for any type of application, or share metadata for a technology agnostic application for along with your Oracle Hyperion applications, which is actually one of the most common things that we see. You do also get reading and feeding to any application or data warehouse. So that means that you are able to automatically source your metadata from SAP or EBS, and you can put it through EPMware if EPMware is not your central place to author that metadata. Right. Finally, what is not included with EPMware is a limited use license, which means that we do not charge by the node, which is different from DRM. But of course, DRM Lite, I don't believe there's any node restriction there. Per node fees, right? That's one of our biggest things. Now, again, a license is required for EPMware. So DRM Lite, obviously you can get it for free, but you'll have to pay consulting costs to get it up and running if you don't have that in-house support available. But with EPMware, there is going to be a subscription fee or a one-time platform fee for the on-premise version. So some of our upgrade considerations. Now, using EPMA interface tables in the past was a really great way to automate metadata from a data warehouse or from a set of external interface tables. Now, in my past Hyperion consulting days, I've built this quite a few times to integrate either with EBS or to pull metadata from just a basic interface table from another, where metadata was flowing from another platform. And there were many different automation scripts that you can call to run automated jobs through EPMA. So you can completely automate the entire process. The issue that we see here is that this update from DRM Lite doesn't allow any reading or feeding from external systems or data warehouses. So if you do have some type of automation that's available or set up with EPMA right now, we don't believe that you're going to get this functionality or continue to use this functionality with the fully without upgrading to the fully licensed version. So going to the fully licensed version means that you will have to get a certain license that allows per node fees, and you'll be able to use that extra functionality. But that's something that you should think of. If you're using EPMA interface tables, how much are you using them? Is this something that you could technically live without? And what type of automation or how heavy of an automation process are you leveraging with EPMA right now? Now, rebuilding EPMA-like functionality is also something that we need to think about. Some of the greatest features were, as we said, around validations. Now, those validations ran to make sure that we had invalid characters, member naming conventions, required associations, default members for planning, of course, alias and member name checks. Those are probably huge. Attribute dimension associations, S-base, ASO, and BSO, attribute dimension association, sort order, character length, and uniqueness. Now, a lot of these were huge, right? So this saved most of our admins a lot of time from pushing this metadata to the target application and then understanding what failed. You were able to run validations and then get some of these kickouts early so that you were able to go back to the business and make sure that you were had metadata that conformed with all of the multiple applications that you were managing. Now, in order to get these in DRM Lite, you have to rebuild everything that you were using in EPMA, or even with the fully licensed version of DRM. For EPMware, these are all included out of the box. So every single application that we support, we provide the out-of-the-box validation. So the typical stuff that you see in the admin guide is what you're going to get when you're up and running on day one of using EPMware. Now, again, if you wanted to build these, again, it will take some time to get those up and running, but it is something that you could do. We put a link over here for the EPMA validations from the admin guide, and so they're very explicitly listed over there. And so if you wanted to use these with DRM Lite, you can always build these from scratch. Now, the direct deployment capability was my personal favorite. This allowed us to, bridge the gap between the front-end interface of EPMA and the target application, and you pushed a button in EPMA and the metadata pushed out, as you see over here. So you went over into your application library and you simply hit the deploy button and you hit validate, and then you were able to push this out into the target application that EPMA was managing. Now, if you're managing, multiple different applications, 15, 20, 30 applications, which I've seen very commonly, this was a really great feature. Allowed you to manage those deployments, understand details about those deployments, like as you see here in the background here, we've got the name, the type, when it was created, when it was last deployed, and then the final status of what happened to that deployment. And as an admin, to centrally manage these was a pretty critical thing to a set of features to use. These with DRM Lite have to be rebuilt, so there are no built-in deployments that you get out of the box. But this is different than EPM, where we build the deployment out of the box for all applications that we support. So that means that all Oracle Cloud and on-prem applications can live together in EPMware, and you can deploy, for example, if you have HFM and S-base and planning, and you decide to go to PBCS or you decide to go to OAC, you can very easily share your metadata between those cloud and on-prem applications centrally with EPMware. All right, and when it comes to doing these deployments, you can manage those deployments almost the same way. So here you can see we're doing that deployment from the app library, and here in our screenshot, you can see that in our deployment manager, all the different deployments that are running to their target applications. All right, we kind of take it a step further, but we'll talk about that a little bit later down the demo. So now future state, migrating to Oracle Cloud, and it's, kind of just what we talked about right now. If we're going to move over to Oracle Cloud, chances are you're not going to go to PBCS and OAC and FCCS all in one shot. I'm sure some people do, and the platform has come a long way and is probably able to support that type of migration now, but it's not something folks do, probably just risk mitigation strategies. But the most popular option that we've seen is folks are, going to PBCS or EPBCS or giving OAC a shot. And we've done a number of different integrations to these target applications, and folks are pretty happy about them. But what they're not happy about is, how do they manage metadata pushes to these cloud applications? In addition to that, what we've seen is applications like OAC don't really have the capabilities of managing metadata like they used to have in EAS. So to be able to copy metadata from one hierarchy to another, like an ASO to BSO copy, is not available in OAC yet. And we're not sure if that's going to show up. But if you're managing a number of different cubes in OAC, this is something that you absolutely want to do. So from our side, from the EPMware side, we've added capabilities that allow you to, copy ASO to BSO hierarchies. They allow you to copy and paste, insert shared from one hierarchy to another. So a lot of your features that you used to use in EAS, you have the same type of metadata management options available. So this can, make that transition to PBCS or OAC that much easier. So as far as data governance goes, this is something that we never really had with EPMA, but again, this is something that a lot of customers are now thinking about moving to. There are different data governance platforms out there that you can use either with DRM. DRG is a popular one that folks use as well, but both of those options come at different prices. So you do have to purchase DRM, the fully licensed version, and then you have to purchase DRG separately. So they are two different costs. That's something to think about. EPMware does have a fully built-in data governance platform as part of the core set of functionality. What the governance platform allows you to do is allow reviewers, approvers to come into the application once a user has requested metadata, and allows them to see the hierarchy, see where a member rolls up in an application, and it allows them to either approve it, reject it, or it allows them to enrich that metadata if they are either an admin or a power user that needs to add certain elements to that metadata. Then that visibility is centrally available through the dashboard, and you can see exactly who needs to review and approve metadata as it goes through its full built-out workflow. So again, this is not an additional cost in EPMware. It's something that you get out of the box. You can simply build a workflow from the front end, and you can push that out to the target app. Now, in addition to that, validations and properties are also available. So we do have a logic builder, which is kind of like a formula building module that allows you to build custom logic for either applications to be mapped to each other or custom properties or derived properties and derived formulas. So, something to think about. This is not functionality that, I believe this functionality exists within DRM, but not in EDMCS yet. So, something to think about. Now, creating metadata in EPMware really is just like a 5-step process. You can create metadata primarily through the web-based application. So a user will log in from the front end and create a brand new request for metadata. Now, we also have the capability to allow users to come in from an ERP or to flow metadata from a bulk upload template and push it into a request. But all metadata is actually managed from a request and pushed into EPMware. Now, once it goes through EPMware, it goes to the workflow process that we just talked about, and then it will notify either reviewers or approvers that they need to log in and they need to take some kind of action on that metadata. Now, all of this can be monitored in real time. And then finally, EPMware does push that metadata out to target applications. As far as the workflows go, workflows are primarily built of validation stages, review and approve stages. You can have any number of these stages available, but you can build validations by dimension, by application. It really is up to the end user to think about how they want to manage this process. And then finally, this gets into a deployment stage where EPMware can deploy this metadata directly out to a direct application that we're interfaced to, an interface table, or even a flat file. So some of the direct integrations that EPMware supports are through the on-prem, the cloud applications, EBS, SAP, PeopleSoft, and some of the non-traditional EPM applications, right? So it's not only Oracle applications that we support, but we're expanding our adapters to many different target applications. Right, and so what we want to do is give you a little bit of a look and feel of EPMware through a demo, and here we go. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter your questions in the chat box, and we'll be going through those towards the tail end of this presentation. Now here we are logging on to EPMware, and we can see that we do support single sign-on. So we do integrate with MSAD, with LDAP, and of course you can use SAML 2.0 to make that connectivity. Let me sign in over here. And once we're signed in, you do see the dashboard. And let me just pull up a request that has some visualization to it here. On the left, we've got our different modules that make up EPMware. Now, these modules can be hidden with security. So typically as an end user, you may log in and just see 2 or 3 modules, probably something to explore. So Explorer allows you to just visualize metadata and not make any changes. And of course, the create request metadata allows you to interact with the metadata and make changes before you push it out into a workflow. Now, these are really, the rest of these are more for admins. So workflow allows you to build your own workflow. Our logic builder allows you to create logic that's used in derived members or in mappings between applications. Our deployment allows you to deploy metadata directly to a target application. So in our prior example, we talked about either EPMware pushing metadata using a scheduled process, or even allowing an admin to push that metadata to selective applications. That's all managed over here. So you have a wide variety of options there. Here is our ERP import. ERP import allows us to configure interactions between interface tables to source metadata and bring them through EPMware. So in a case where you might have a dimension for your planning application that doesn't come from EBS, you can pull that metadata directly through this interface table, just like maybe you were doing in EPMA, and retain that functionality for a more automated lights out process from your GL or from your interface table. And then the rest of these are pretty much more admin related configurations. Our audit module allows you to run reports on every single transaction that's captured, whether it's governance or simple changes to metadata. All right. Over here, we see a list of requests in our dashboard. And as we click on these requests, we are able to see a visual representation of this workflow. Now, let me get into a workflow that has some detail here. So let's go over here. And here you can see that this is a request that's been submitted into our workflow. So you can see that EPMware is tracking the approvals and the reviews as this metadata goes through its four-step process. Here you can see our workflow status is pending approval, and we can see that who it's pending approval from. So this means that we know exactly by name which users need to log in and provide their approval on the next stage. So if something gets stuck in our data governance process, this way we know exactly who to contact to keep it moving and get this metadata cleared. Now, you can also contact them directly from EPMware here. So just by simply clicking this email icon, this will send an email to that user notifying them that they need to take action or something is waiting for their approval in EPMware. All right, now let's flip over here and just go into our Explorer and show you what metadata looks like when it's in EPMware. So here, let's take a look at an FCCS application, for instance. Now, this is an application that has been imported into EPMware. The import process is a very, very quick process. You're simply just registering an application in the configuration panel, and then you're hitting an import button. And what that does is EPMware reaches out into that target application, whether it's on-prem or cloud, and then brings that metadata directly here into EPMware. And this process takes probably a few minutes to complete, and then you're able to browse your metadata just like you were in your target application. So now this is the source of truth for metadata, and any changes are done here in the create request, not over here in the Explorer. But here you can see all of your metadata, the properties, and in exactly the same way as you were going to see them as if they were in your target application. Now let's go over to a different type of application here. Let's take a look at a Essbase application. And we'll look at our entity dimension. All right, so here you can see we've got our member name, default parent, and all of the different properties. Of course, if we wanted to see alternate categories and stats for this application or system properties, we have the ability to do so here. Now, if I wanted to create a new metadata item, I can simply click on my metadata request under create request, and this will open up a brand new create request screen for metadata. I can quickly go over to due date, set my due date, type in view account over here, set my property priority, set my workflow, hit save, and now I'm able to make a request for new metadata. And let's go into BSO share. Let's go into measures, and let's add some new metadata. Now, the difference here between us and other applications is that you can release this hierarchy out through this screen right here to a number of users that now need to interact with this metadata in the future. So folks from the business will log into EPMware, will go to this create request screen, they can visualize their metadata in the application, and they can see all of the properties that they want to see. Now, if they don't need to see every single property, we can create a view that will hide everything else that's too technical for them to know. And in most cases, folks will know exactly where they need to create metadata, like what parent they need to roll up to, but they don't really know some of the more technical features. So we can hide these in a different category and then just have these properties available to them. All right, and so let's come in over here and add a new member from metadata. So to make a transaction on a metadata item within a hierarchy, you're simply going to right click and see the different transactions that are available. Now, these transactions are all available because I'm an admin, but you can have these hidden via security. So typically we don't want to see, delete member or rename member as an option for end users, but it could be a valid option for administrators. So now here, if I went in and I create a brand new member, I can click enter, and now my metadata item is added here to the hierarchy, and it's added in red. So you can see that I added this member, but I can also see that somebody added this member over here as well. And so some of the built-in validations here, I knew there was this member here, so I added it as INV1, but if I added a member called INV, so the built-in validations already tell us that, this member already exists in the measures dimension, we can't add this again. And we can add any different type of validation that we want using the logic builder engine. It can be as complex as you want or as simple as you want. It doesn't have to be a technical validation. It can be something as simple as my account dimension has to have a underscore in front of it, or any member that's added to my measures dimension must be less than 80 characters. Or the member name and the alias need to be unique. So a lot of these validations that come out of the box, but any business specific validations can be built and are probably the most important area of implementations that we focus on. So this allows us to capture a lot of the issues and the errors that administrators catch when they receive metadata. And what we've seen is that folks will run a significant number of scripts to be able to catch these issues and errors. So what we've done is that we've allowed this validation to run in real time so that end users are made aware that they're trying to do something to metadata that's not allowed. And so we stop the issue from ever even occurring inside the application and going into a workflow. Here you can see two things happened. Number one, a member was created in my BSO share application, but what I've done in EPMware is that I've mapped this to another application. So I've mapped this over to BSO sample. So now if I click here on the second line, this will drill down into the second application in BSO sample, and it'll show me where I've mapped this member that I've created. So I told EPMware that anytime a member shows up here, it has to show up over here as well. And so EPMware automatically creates a line item with that new metadata over here. And so, of course, we're free to populate any of these properties, or we can always hide these properties once this is submitted into the workflow. Now, here, I can just submit this and allow this to go into the workflow process, and everybody who is in my workflow will be notified via email that either they have an approval or enrichment of metadata that they need to do. But I can also go and now do a bulk upload if I need to. Let's just say I have 150 or 200 members or 2,000 members that I need to add into an application. I can simply add those into a CSV template and then drop them over here or browse for that file and upload them. And EPMware will automatically create those line items and show us where those members exist in the hierarchy. So just a much faster way than coming into a request and right-clicking and going create member or insert shared member in this GUI view. Of course, everything we do is tracked over here. So now if I come in here and I add an alias, hit OK, hit save. Alias is available, and down below I can see every single change is tracked here in the activity log. Now this activity log can be exported out or is also available in our audit module, so that you can push this out to auditors to see a set of changes within a given time period. And then finally, as I'm done, I'm going to submit this into the workflow. EPMware may run final validations on it, and then finally will tell us that this has been completed, and now it is pushed into the workflow process. So now here we can see that now all of these actions are grayed out. I can't make any more changes in my hierarchy because the request is now in a locked state because it's ready for reviews and approves. And as an end user, if I want to make some changes, I can always come in here and I can recall this back to my queue and make whatever changes are necessary. Now, once this goes into the workflow, if I'm responsible for reviewing or updating this request, I'll see this request in my dashboard in my actions required as a filter, and I can simply come in here. I can see the two line items that were created. I can drill down and I can see exactly where it rolls up. If I have to add properties, I can update any properties here. And when I'm done, I'll simply just hit the approve or reject on the line item to keep it moving into the next stage of the workflow. So let's take a look at that workflow in 1890. Yeah, I believe some of my workflow services were stopped, so we'll just start those up again. Let's go into the dashboard and just refresh this. All right, so here we can see that one approval was completed, and now we're pending reviews, and I can see where we're pending reviews from. Right, so that pretty much does it for our process of creating and approving new metadata. Now, of course, once this reaches the deployment stage, this will be deployed either automatically using a built-in scheduler in our deployment engine, or an admin can come in and say, I just want to deploy 1890 and maybe 1887, 1886, and I want to deploy it only to BSO sample. I don't want to deploy it to everything. You have that capability. Of course, EPMware keeps track of every single line item in every request, and if it was successfully deployed or not, and will tell you whether it was successful or not, or what the failure was. So when you're using a EPMware adapter to deploy to the target application, that connectivity and the messaging from that API will tell you exactly what the error was with the target application, whether it was maybe a connectivity failure, or we missed a validation and we allowed a duplicate member name and alias to go to the target app. And that gives us two options. Number one is fix the metadata, and I can just redeploy it, and I'm able to now add a validation to my list of validations, so we never encounter that failure again down the road. right? Now these are, some of the major features with EPMware. Of course, there's a lot more. I can just keep going on and on for hours and hours. Again, our goal here was to start allowing folks to start thinking about the deprecation of EPMA and the different options that are available. And we're going to continue to, populate our deck and our articles with any updates that we hear about as we're at Open World this week, and also the many new updates that we'll get down the road. If you have any other questions, I'll allow you to type them into the chat box, and Karen, I'll let you take over as far as any Q&A goes.
Okay, we have some questions in the box already, and I will go ahead and read those out. So the first one is, does EPMware connect to Microsoft Dynamics?
So EPMware does have a variety of target applications that we connect to. We can connect to almost any application that we want. We do not have a supported adapter for Microsoft Dynamics, but through the use of interface tables, we can very easily make that connectivity. What we've seen in the past is that most GL applications, administrators don't want us directly connecting to GLs and running transactions against those platforms. And they do like us to have an interface table in between. So that's where, we've stopped short of building an entire adapter for that platform. So it is something that we're still thinking about. But in most cases, interaction between an application like Dynamics or SAP, or in some cases even EBS, JDE, or PeopleSoft, it really is best and most easily accomplished using a simple interface table.
Okay, next question is, does Oracle certify EPMware as a third-party application?
No, I don't think Oracle certifies us as a third-party application. We are using the Oracle certified APIs to push metadata, just like as if you were to call the API if you were to write custom logic. So it is, a trusted technology that's been around and is Oracle supported. So we do support the connectivity using those APIs. So if something goes wrong using our adapters, we are responsible for making sure that that connectivity is up and running with all of the different updates that Oracle pushes out.
Okay, next question is, can you have different versions of the hierarchies?
So versions are a pretty interesting question. We technically do support versions through multiple different layers of applications in our hierarchy. So you can have multiple different hierarchies available in EPMware, and they can be, version 2019, version 2018, version 2017. We do have a use case where we did build something like that. So like a current year application and a prior year application. Sometimes folks like to archive off an application and then start with the latest version of an application. So if that's the definition of version, then yes, you can do that. And we've also seen a different version concept being used where people simply say, I just want to store a version off onto either a flat file or a CSV file. And so EPMware does keep a version automatically in EPMware on a day-by-day basis. So if you wanted to look at your entity hierarchy every day for the last whatever number of months or years that you've been using EPMware, you're able to just simply see that snapshot at any day. So today you can go back and say, I just want to know what my entity hierarchy was on December 31st. for any number of applications that are in EPMware. You can easily do that. So we've seen, version translate between either of those two. But, we're more than happy to, talk to you about your specific use case if you reach out to us.
Okay. Next question is, instead of using metadata request, can I create it directly just like in EPMA?
So in EPMware, two ways to create metadata. Number one is to create a request. You don't have to have your request go through a full end user workflow. A lot of our customers who just have administrators as the entry point of metadata have a workflow that has either 0 or 1 stage, but that's really the primary entry point and the preferred way to track all the different changes of metadata in the application. The other way is to create metadata via a ERP import. So to load metadata within an interface table and then have EPMware read that interface table and automatically identify deltas, but EPMware still creates a request behind the scenes so you can see exactly what the changes were and what the deltas were as they flowed through. So everything in EPMware really hovers around the request concept. And that's just the way we like to do it, because it really creates a very formalized method of tracking changes to metadata, whether it's done by an administrator, a power user, or an end user.
All right. Next question is, can it integrate with ERP systems like PeopleSoft?
Yes, absolutely. So short answer is yes. We have done integrations with EBS, with SAP, other older GL systems as well. And just as we said in the last question, just simple interfaces, and we can integrate with them on the inbound side and the outbound side. So tomorrow, if you wanted to source your chart of account segments from an ERP, but you also wanted to allow customers to author metadata for segments that didn't come from your ERP directly in EPMware, you have that capability. So you just pick and choose which dimensions you want to source from an ERP and which dimensions you want customers to author directly in EPMware. And then on the outbound side, you have the capability of pushing metadata, a select set of metadata to your supported EPM applications, or you can even say, I want all of these hierarchies pushed out to a data warehouse as well. So both use cases have been used in conjunction with each other.
And the final question is, does workflow have to be implemented in EPMware?
Great question. So short answer is no. You do not have to have a workflow. You can use EPMware simply to manage your metadata. And that actually just came up last week with a customer who wanted to use EPMware for OAC. So they had a number of different cubes and they really didn't have a stringent data governance process. They wanted something to manage their OAC metadata to just manage it the way they were managing their Essbase cubes in EAS. And they really had no interest in data governance. So short answer again is no, you do not have to have a workflow. You use a request to make changes. You can submit it into a workflow, but the workflow will have 0 stages. So it'll go directly to deploy, and then the admin can deploy that metadata whenever they're ready to, or you can even set it to auto deploy.
All right, we got one more question that just came in.
Mm-hmm.
Does it include, let's see, does it include compare to deployed application and exclude member features?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so that was it for questions then.
Okay, great. Thanks, Karen. Again, just go down to my last slide over here. If there are any additional questions as we move forward, always feel free to visit us at EPMware.com. And we'll be uploading this presentation to ODTUG, and we'll make it available on our popular social media channels. But always feel free to reach out to us at EPMware.com, or you can reach me directly, Abhi, ABHI, at EPMware.com, if you have any questions. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Karen and ODTUG, for allowing us to present. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you so much for being with us today, Abhi. Thank you all for attending, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Have a good one.